I appreciate that. This is City Island Rising. This is our community-based organization that we started. This is meeting number 5. This is a wonderful turnout of City Island. Every meeting we've been getting about a large number of people, and I think that's people voting with their feet. They want new representation, they want new ideas, they want new initiatives that we are starting here. So everybody, thank you. I appreciate that. And just so, because we do have some new people here. So the mission of City Island Rising is to strengthen the social and cultural fabric of our diverse community by promoting civic engagement, preserving the historic and nautical character of our island, protecting and retaining open space, preserving our environment, enforcing traffic control and municipal safety, and supporting small businesses. Improving the quality of life in our community for all residents and businesses is our objective. Rather than feeling isolated, residents join together in our association to leverage solutions to community problems. We strive to maintain a free, open, and democratic association. So, again, I know that we got a lot of people here. We got benches coming in, so just bear with us. This is going to be an informative meeting. And I know you guys did not come out to see me, you came out to see the senator. So we have some business we are going to tend to in the beginning of this meeting. So, if everyone could just bear with us, this is actually going to be good. First thing we have going on is, I'm going to give my report, which is the first thing I believe on the agenda. So, the first thing we have here is, I'm going to start with bad news, and I'm going to go to good news.
Okay, everybody be quiet!
Let's keep it down as much as possible, my friends. Alright, well, let's keep everything going strong here, okay? We're fine. So this is about Rodman's Neck. Everyone cares about this, right? So let's talk about something that's actually creating a lot of noise. Bob Beater, who's the president of the 45th Precinct Community Council, and by the way, we are passing around the Precinct Council schedule. It's a we just need to keep everything quiet here. We're passing around the schedule because we need City Island always represented at these meetings to fight for our fair share of traffic control, police enforcement, everything else. We need you guys to show up at this, so I printed 50 copies of this. If you need a copy after this, please let me know, but you should have enough. What he advised is he spoke to the head of capital construction. They are finalizing their budget, and they plan to actually go back to the Office of Management and Budget in mid-August. The construction costs are way over expected, and they may need to ask for additional funding or ask for funding in stages. We will know more by the end of August. We have asked that they prioritize the soundproofing. The tactical village, which they're updating, is still usable. So we are waiting on them to get back to us, because what we are trying to do is get the sound done as soon as possible. Oh, there we go. Round of applause for the senator. All right. And have she will come to the front. Or maybe she's going to go around greeting people, but we're going to keep the conversation moving forward here until she gets here. So we have, again, with Rodman's Neck, we're handling this from a two-pronged approach. Number one is noise. Guys. Listen, I know we're in a bar. We're going to make it work as best we can. First thing is noise. So we are asking for them to prioritize the soundproofing. And whatever they can put in the budget towards soundproofing, that's going to remain priority number one. Priority number two, which is just as equally as important, is that we have a situation where, unfortunately, they are not being honest, or I don't want to say honest, but they're not being forthright about possible lead contamination. They have not provided the readings. So what we are doing is we have been foiling them. We've been speaking to the senator, and I know she's going to address that in her comments. We're doing everything in our human power to find out what's going on with the lead. Verbally, they will tell you in these meetings, don't worry about the lead, everything's fine. But when someone doesn't show you something in writing, but is more than comfortable saying it to you on the fly, that's something you have to be concerned about. And we are going to have another monitoring committee. I think it's going to be in September. We're going to blast it out to the entire membership. If Rodman's Neck is an issue important to you, we need bodies in the chair when we have these meetings. Because City Island is the ones who get most affected by this issue. We need to have most of the seats in the room. So that's very important to us. Second matter is on November 3rd of this year, we are going to have so I'm asking everybody, repeating a third time, November 3rd, I'm encouraging everyone to mark their calendars. We are going to have, at the Morris Yacht Club, starting at 11 a.m., a CPR class for anyone who wants to learn, free of charge, done by the fire department. And we're going to have a Narcan class so people can learn how to use the naloxone. So if someone overdoses and you happen to have this on you, you can save a life. These are very important classes. We've had people who are volunteers doing this for a long time, but we're going to take on a more community role. It's on us, even if we don't know somebody who maybe suffers from it, to have this on us, to learn about this. Because, it's a split-second decision. There was just something that happened at the 3rd Avenue bid. Someone ran over there who had gotten the training and saved a life, just today. That could happen here. We all know the names of people who have grappled and who have suffered with addiction. And they might not be in our immediate circle, they might not be our best friends, but if there's something we can do to save a life, we should all take that upon us and we should do it. So that is very important stuff. Yes, and Michael Prietti is the person who should be thanked for this, because Michael Prietti is giving us the Mars Yacht Club free of charge to do this. So thanks to Michael Prietti. I know someone's recording this, I believe, so we will thank him. Thank you, Michael, wherever you are. The other thing that we have to do, and I also want to say there are a lot of productive conversations going on right now. Part of what this group, and again, when we started this group, we started with the listening session. We went out here and we listened to you. And one of the most frequent things that you all brought up again and again was the opioid crisis. So what we have done is we have convened a small working group. Some of them are here today. You're going to hear from both of them as the night goes on here. And we're also joined with a licensed social worker clinician. We are trying to put together a town hall in November, one for adults and parents, and one for young adults, to discuss the opioid crisis right here on City Island. This is going to be our major initiative in November. We've been in close communications with the Department of Health. We are trying and we are pushing to try to make sure that the pharmacy has the program to cover the co-pays on the naloxone, so we can get the naloxone out as quickly as possible. And DOH also has a program, and we're going to partner with them to go into the nightlife establishments, because the fentanyl, which is the drug that's unfortunately killing so many people in this neighborhood and other neighborhoods, is now finding its way into other drugs. So we are going to make sure that the naloxone is given out in the nightlife establishments. We're going to make sure that it's given out, or at least cheaper and more available at the pharmacy. I've already spoken to Anthony about this. So we're going to make a really, really concerted effort. Everyone knows someone who's lost someone, or anyone who's lost someone personally. So this is really priority number one. We're not pointing fingers. We're not blaming bad guys. This isn't about anything. This is about us. It's about us taking care of the community. So we're going to move forward with this. And I want to thank everybody who, what you find in a time of tragedy is, and unfortunately we've had many with this, is there are so many people who have just been helping quietly on the sides. And this is a really good community. And a lot of people have been helping, giving out the naloxone, not looking for fame, not looking for anything. And it's really heartwarming, and we're going to try to highlight some of those people and the work that they've been doing for years in, years out. And we're going to try as a community to help support them as they help other people. Thank you. Okay, so we have some follow-ups here, which we're going to do, because we try to get back to you on everything. I'm not going to take questions immediately after this, because I know you're not just here to hear me. We're trying to move the meeting along. That's why all these Post-it notes are on the tables with pens. As the meeting goes on, if you have a question that you want to ask one of us, or ask the senator, and we're not going to get to it, write down your question on the Post-it note. We're going to collect them at the end. Write down who your question is to. Write down your name. Write down your number. Write down how we can get back to you. We don't have the bat signal. We can't put your name in it. We need to be able to get back to you to help you with your question or concern. So please use that. First thing, we had a very long conversation about the bike rentals. Remember, at the last meeting. So we did pen a letter to the Department of Transportation in support of one of the vendors who's trying to expand their Bronx service. So it would cover all of us. And this would be one of the ones that are dockless. So we understand the concerns. but we are pushing forward because we need more transportation mediums, so not everybody's going to get in their car to come to City Island. Maybe they'll try something else, and either way it's good for the environment, and people here like bikes, as we all know. They are going to have a response to their inquiry at the end of the month. So we are hopeful to have a response to you by the end of the month of what's going on. Second thing, and again, even though City Bike was updated, that's not on this side of the borough. So we're trying to think of creative ways to raise our voices to make sure that this community gets its fair share in all these negotiations and agreements. So it's very important that if you hear of things, to let us know. You can email cityislandrising, one word, @gmail.com. You can call me, you can speak to me, you can email me. We're going to not take questions right now because we want to get to the center as quickly as possible. But this is very important. Second thing that came up at the last meeting was the catering hall. And I'm not trying to put anyone on the spot, but for who is the catering hall a very, very serious issue? Catering, I see Mr. Blackman. Okay, I'm not going to name everybody, but I see a couple hands. After the meeting, if you can come to me, but as of right now, they haven't put in for a liquor license yet, but we are monitoring the situation. We are in touch with our elected officials, and when we know, when the thing has been applied for, we will let you know. That is going up at the end of January. That is going up, so we will do what we can on that, no problem. I know we got some heat, unfortunately, for what happened there. I just want to say something very quickly. People were saying that the traffic light was somehow given for political reasons or what have you. These are the traffic stats for the last 8 years at that intersection. Does anyone want to take a guess how many accidents we had at that intersection? 22 recorded at Down Street. 22 in 8 years. Recorded. 19 people were injured. Thankfully, no one lost their life. A light is needed there to prevent someone from losing their life. We know this is a problem. We try to be governed by data, and so are these departments. This is important. We had 2 requests that came from Arabia, which, Arabia, we're going to pause on those so we can get to the senator quicker, but we'll deal with that afterwards. One is to ask the developer on Marine Street to clean up their property, and the other is to support Arabia's initiative and the other City Island organization's initiative to get a stoplight on Pilot Street. Because it's not an either or. It's never about subtraction, it's always about addition. You have to be there for everyone. And I don't think either of those are controversial motions. So if it's all right with everybody, I'm going to make the motion to write letters both to the Marine Street property to clean up the property, to support Arabia and her efforts doing that. And the second is to support the ongoing efforts with the city departments to get a traffic light on Pilot Street. Is everyone in favor? Is anyone opposed? Okay, I was going to stop. Okay, I was like, that's right. I mean, I wouldn't stop you. Okay, so we will talk, we will get on that. Also, because when you reach Pilot Street, we all know at that intersection, there's issues with visibility. And we know when they put the new parking lot, they built the fence very high. So I want to let you all know that I had a conversation with the owners, and we've asked for them to look into making, after a meeting with Rabia, we looked into them doing something with the fencing to make it more visible so people can see through, so we have better visibility on that intersection. You can't park up to that corner, it's a bus stop, but we are working on that as well. And I said I would close on good news, so we have 2 good news items. One, we wrote a letter on drainage at the Little League field. Remember this? This was something, someone from the Little League came, presented this. Beverly has been working on this. We spoke to the Little League. We sent this out to all our elected officials. And one of our elected officials, and I won't say who he or she is, but they took a strong interest in this, and they're already in communications with the Parks Department to get the pricing on this. So hopefully they will do better drainage at the park, and that will lead to the Little League games going a little quicker and not getting canceled as much. So they're able to finish their seasons. So we are working on that as well. And then in September, we already have our meeting guests confirmed, and we have a big headliner here tonight, but we have other folks who are going to be coming next month as well. We have Captain Frazier from the 45th Precinct is going to be joining us. So any questions you have on traffic, he's the guy to speak to. Any questions you have on anything related to the police, he's the guy to talk to. And we are going to have our neighborhood community officers who will be coming in shortly. Second guest is going to be Assemblymember Benedetto.
What's the date?
The date is going to be September 10th. Yes.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Absolutely. Okay, that concludes my report. So we are going to call up now Dan and Lauren to speak for the Small Business Committee. Yes.
No script. Staying on script.
Hold on a second. Yes. Yes. Oh, and the police are here. Because
They came to tell you if you have a bike outside, it's going to get rained on.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren.
And I'm Dan, and we, first thank you for coming. I feel like we're kind of like a fish tank, that every time we get into a bigger space, that space fills. So thank you for being a part of it. That was on purpose. We established when we started this 5 months ago, whatever, we started a bunch of subcommittees, and Lauren and I and a handful of other people were part of the Small Business Committee, because we are a pro-business organization, right? There's two parts of City Island. They're the residents and they're the businesses, and ideally we can figure out a way for it to work for everybody, so people can live here and people can work here, and people can raise their kids here, right? And they all kind of have something to do with each other. So we're going to try to make that happen along with all the other organizations.
So we want to tell you some of the ideas. The initial idea is about reflecting some of the things that we've heard and then some of the things that we've been discussing, but the main takeaway is we're looking for anyone who's interested to help us. So if you are, please see us at the end of the meeting, or feel free to reach us on Facebook, via Messenger, or by email. All right, so Dan, I'll start with the first idea.
So our first agenda, since we've had our subcommittee meetings, is we're hoping to sit down with the other organizations on City Island and figure out what people's priorities are on what we're trying to do with this thing as a whole, right? Because there's lots of vacant storefronts and things have been like that for a while, and we're endlessly concerned about putting people in those storefronts to fill out the island, because in essence with that stuff, more is better. It's not about competition between the places. If people come to City Island and they shop my store, the first thing I'm going to do is send them to other people's stores, and so on and so forth. So the first thing we're going to do is just make sure we don't duplicate what has happened in the past. So we're going to we're going to try to talk with the other organizations to figure out what is protocol of what have we done, how do we sort of improve on that and work within those limits, so we're not wasting anyone's time doing things that are already done.
The second thing that we're working on, I'm not sure if people know, but recently the City Council passed 2 key pieces of legislation related to small businesses, and we have a feeling that they would be able to help us for some of the storefronts that have been chronically vacant. So we're going to look into that legislation and see if there's anything that can be done to help us, making sure that there are people who are in the spaces instead of being kicked out of the spaces, for example, with rents being increased or being speculated for to be rented out for a higher price.
And so on our agenda, we're going to hold 2 to 3 small business envisioning sessions during the fall and winter, where we're going to engage residents, commercial property owners, small business owners in to discuss what other businesses, if any, they would want on City Island. So for example, some people say we need more restaurants, some people say we need no restaurants at all, some people say we need like a sporting goods store or a pet shop or whatever, and we're going to try to get together and educate each other to sort of try to figure out, okay, if you think a rent on a storefront is inappropriate, well, what can you put in there at what price? For us to endlessly say that the rents are too high or the business plans are wrong, frankly, we don't really have the right information yet. So we're hoping to sort of get with other people who have done this or other small business alliances and seeing what they have done that's worked.
We're going to take questions at the end.
I just want to throw one in here, please. Will you please inquire as to what the tax consequences are for those stores and see whether those taxes need to be adjusted to make it easier for people to rent here?
We agree, and you know, property taxes are a big issue, but
Yes,
also
the answer, yes is the answer. We will look into that.
Yes, we will look into that.
Sorry. And in addition to like thinking of new things, having an open dialogue about what we want to see in the existing storefronts. We've had a lot of great opportunities coming onto the island. The flower shop, Jan's business, the place that we're in right now. What do we want to see to make sure that these places stay? Hours, different products, whatever it is. So that's the envisioning sessions. And then the last thing that the Small Business Committee is working on after the envisioning sessions will be a survey. So people that aren't able to make it out, we're going to be doing written flyers, going door to door, using social media, whatever it is. We want to engage residents because I want to stay here. I moved back here so that I can spend the rest of my life here and support the local economy. And part of that is making sure we have great small businesses with the goods that we want. So if you guys are interested, please let us know. Come see us. Contact us at my email. I did not tell you my email, but I will tell you my email if you would like my email. It is lnye610@gmail.com. And I'll also be here tonight until whenever. Cool.
And just two questions real quick. How many people how many people work on City Island? Because I'm always fascinated. We're not writing this, but you know what, like 10% of us maybe? How many people own homes on City Island? Or let me rephrase, people live on City Island. Doesn't matter whether you own it or not. Right? So 90% of these people, 90% of us live here, and 10% of us work here. So everybody that works here is more likely to spend more money here because they, by default, are going to spend more money here. So if we had more people, if we had more storefronts and more people working, more people would be spending money, hence a better economy for everyone. So come talk to us if you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We asked the senator, she's got time and she's willing to listen, so we're actually going to continue with our agenda. Joanne and Stephanie, and it's Stephanie's birthday today. Stephanie's 25 years old. Happy birthday, Stephanie. Violet actually has a cake for her, which we're going to do after all the festivities, but come on up to the front, my friend, and we're going to do the welcoming committee report. And this is, before they speak, we really should give them another round of applause. The welcoming committee has been meeting with people who are in the business community, and they've been working very hard because what we're trying to do here, as we said earlier, is change the culture. And part of changing the culture is making sure that new islanders are welcomed, and welcomed immediately when they get here. And that is changing the culture here a little bit, but it's a welcome change, and it's going to get more good people into the process earlier on, so people feel they can share and lend their abilities earlier on. So I want to thank them. Joanne has been working really hard on this. She's got a wonderful packet she's put together, and Stephanie's been working the businesses very hard, shining with her vibrant personality, so I'll leave this to them now.
Give them another round of applause.
We love Biaggi. I love Biaggi.
Okay, we are the welcoming committee, and the purpose of our committee is to welcome new residents that come to the island, so this way they don't feel so isolated. And one of the ways that we did that was I tried to intertwine a lot of the organizations, such as Chamber, the City Island Chamber. Paul gave me his input, Barbara from the Civic Association, and other nonprofit associations. So in this packet, we have some coupons from Clipper Coffee, we have something from the Snug, we have
City Island Wine.
yes, wine.
Florist Shop, which we will deliver that day, the day of.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a copy of the Island Current, which has a column about the Oyster Project. So this way it'll give new residents a small greeting and a welcoming, and if they have any questions, they could come to us. And we are going to do it door to door. But we do need a little help. We did reach out to some real estate agencies for new residents that are coming in. And so we're taking those names. And if anybody knows of anybody new to the island, or you have a new neighbor, just get in touch with us. And I'm going to pass around 2 welcoming packets so you could see a little bit what it entails.
Oh, and I want to thank the museum. Barbara, that's a beautiful map. I don't know if we said anything earlier, but yes, of City Island. And thank you in the museum for that.
Louisa. And now we have a report from another person who's working very hard, Louisa.
So very quickly, at the last meeting, I mentioned how the Waterfront Alliance, so someone, I believe 2 meetings ago, suggested that we get in contact with the Waterfront Alliance. And so we did, and we actually have a tour set up at the end of the month. The Waterfront Alliance, their team, is going to come to City Island, do a tour, and then hopefully in the fall they'll do a presentation to the bigger group. That's my report.
Best report. That was good. Yes, it is. Okay, so before we do this, we're just going to set some ground rules. Beverly's going to be going around with the mic, so just raise your hand. We're going to write down people, we'll call out, we'll try to do people 3 at a time. This is your time. We're going to try to get in as many questions with the senator as humanly possible. This is really great that she's here. She's had a very busy, productive legislative session and was able to fit in getting married a few weeks ago in the interim. So congratulations. And I'm not going to speak very long on this. I think an important thing for everyone here to know is that for really decades in Albany, good ideas went to the state senate and they died. Whether it was things on the environment, whether it was things on women's rights or equal rights or LGBT rights or healthcare, so many things that we needed. Gun control, which obviously is a very pertinent issue today. Things that were related to safety. They would go to Albany and it would not be passed, it would just sit there. And a lot of people throughout the city and the state of New York, and I think our Indivisible group was very involved in this, decided it was time for a change. And sometimes changes become manifested in certain people. And the senator's entry onto the political scene is the typical David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
I mean, she was not favored in the beginning, but she did very, very well here on City Island and has always been well received on City Island. And they've done so many great things this year in Albany. I mean, in the first 2 weeks, in any other legislative session, passing gun control measures, passing the Child Victims Act, passing some of the sexual harassment legislation, passing the climate bill, those would have been the highlights of the sessions. But we had so many good things that happened really so quickly that I don't think people understand really the historic 6 months we've had up in Albany, congestion pricing, and what that's going to mean to all of us. And sometimes it's on all of us to understand that things we see are tied to what happens up there. As everyone here knows, and this is just one story and that's it, the MTA, they just extended the bus. They could only do that with additional funding. The funding comes from congestion pricing. Senator Biaggi passed congestion pricing. So without further ado, because no one came here to hear me talk, Senator Biaggi.
Packed like this is such an exciting thing to walk into. I cannot tell you how many rooms I walk into where there's 3 people when there should have been 20. This is phenomenal, and this is exactly what we need to make sure not only that our communities thrive, but that the people in charge, including myself, know that you're paying attention and are scared by it. And that is what moves mountains, and that is exactly what I am excited to do with all of you. So I just want to really extend to you my gratitude for showing up tonight. I think this is an incredible testament to all of you and how invested you are in this amazing community. Every single one of you, truly. Thank you so much for being here. I want to be here to to take your questions and to listen to you. I don't want to talk at you, but I just want to say a few very brief things that John alluded to. For so many years, 10 years, but really 100 years, the state senate was a place where things went to die. And I think that the fact that our governor, who does not oftentimes give the legislature credit, said that this was the most historic session, the most productive legislative session in the history in modern political history, speaks incredible volumes, because he does not dole out compliments. And the reason for that is because what we have done is we have broken down so many barriers and have gone into so many spaces where people have been afraid to go into, uncomfortable spaces, very challenging topics, very unpopular topics, very visionary things, and also very basic things, because when you actually look behind the curtain and you look at New York, we all think, how many of us think that New York is number one? We are number one. However, some of our laws have not been updated or caught up with the times, and this year we were able to do that, whether it was with early voting or making sure that we're passing revolutionary legislation as it relates to the environment and taking on those issues and thinking about ways to not only make the air cleaner, but how do we deal with the damage that we've done and make sure that we're preparing for the future, congestion pricing, and also looking at the borough of the Bronx as a whole and asking the questions, why is it that every single year the borough of the Bronx is last when it comes to health? Yeah. Why is our air dirtier than the other boroughs? Why do we get less than Queens and Brooklyn and Manhattan and Staten Island? God forbid. It's unbelievable. And finally, I really do believe we have a group of people in a room who not only are fighting for our communities, but who are taking what you say, including myself, and actually turning them into solutions. And if they're not solutions immediately, I can guarantee you that our leader and the people that I work with will hear about them. And not only will they hear about them, they will not stop hearing about them, because I will not stop until the things that you care about are taken care of and are fought for. So just know that if you see a small problem and you think, oh, I don't really want to bother her with that, or if you see a big problem and you think, maybe that's really too big to take on, I am not afraid to take those on. I happily take them on, and I will do it with you, and I am excited to do it. So please know that. We have gone through so many different issues. Really what I wanted to say is that I am excited as we kind of move into the summer and into the fall to be home in the district, because to start a session as a first-time legislator in Albany is probably the backwards way of how I would have done it. It's the counterintuitive way of how I would have liked to begin my session. I would have rather started it in the district, but this is the way that it is. And so I'm happy to be home, to show up to your meetings, to listen to the problems that you have, to come to the PTA meetings, to come to the precinct council meetings that you have, to come to your community board meetings, to come to your living room, if that's where you invite me to come, to hear about the things that matter. And I'm sure that I'll be asked this question, but one of the things that is incredibly disturbing to me in a very local and real way is the way that the Bronx is not able to, for some reason, keep up with the way that other businesses are keeping up in other boroughs, and the vacancies, and the fact that the cost of living and the cost of our rents are just soaring. And this year we did pass historic legislation as it relates to rent reform for tenants. I think it is now time to take on this issue. The city council is doing it, but at the state level, we have to take on this issue with regard to how we deal with businesses and commercial rent reform, so that we don't see people starting businesses and closing them down. We don't see the rents going up and people benefiting from the fact that that property is vacant. We have to put a check on it, and we can, and we will, and we will. And so I'm excited about that. I've met with the president of the Bronx Chamber of Commerce today, and I spoke about this. We're going to walk all of the bids in my district. We're going to have meetings with all of the executive directors of those bids. I want to hear not only from the business owners, but I want to bring to the table in the same meeting the landowners and the real estate property owners, because I want to work out those issues. Otherwise, these issues happen in silos and nothing gets done. And we go through the same things over and over and over again. And so I'm very excited about being in very contentious conversations, because I think that is where all the magic happens. It's where all the magic happens, and honestly, when you go through that fire, on the other side, there's always a better solution. So with that, I could go on, as John knows. I'm going to take your questions I would like to take your questions. Yes, John.
First question we have actually is Caitlin
Thank you.
Steve back.
And so there are more than 90 people in this room.
Wow.
So what I'm going to say is if you have a question, we have a couple questions that were submitted in advance, so we're going to take those first. If you have a question, raise your hand. I'll try and get to as many people in the room as I can. When I get to you, make it a question and sum it up in a minute. Okay? And make it one topic that ends in a question.
Wait, may I just make one more comment?
Absolutely.
So, two very quick things. I wrote them on my folder because I knew I would forget. So, first of all of you in this room, I want you to just keep an eye out for two people on my team who are here tonight. They will be around the district. They are accessible. They are here to serve you. Maura Curtin, who is right here. Raise your hand, Maura Curtin, please. And Miguel, right here by the bar. These are two very valuable members of my team who are here to help all of you, no matter how big or how small the problem is. I wanted to say to Lauren and to Dan, I'm incredibly impressed with what you're doing, and I want to invite you when we have those meetings with the business councils to also bring you on board for that as well, so you can be there. What you're doing is really just awesome. And the welcoming committee, this is not, I have never heard of anything like this happening in the borough of the Bronx. This is so compassionate, it is so full of empathy and love, and it is amazing and transformational, and I am so excited with what you're doing. I will walk those doors with you. Let me know. I would be happy to do that. I love to knock on doors, as many of you know. So I'm happy to do it. But really, you're setting a standard and a model for community at a time when we are in literal crisis, emotionally, spiritually, and it is remarkable that you're doing that here to bridge the divisiveness and to bring unity together. It's really remarkable because so many times when we come to new places where we don't feel welcome. I did not feel welcome in the New York State Senate because it's such a new place, it's a scary place, and it's because of some of my colleagues who literally opened their arms and took my hand and showed me how to do things, that I was able to get the things done that I did, and so I'm so grateful that you're doing that. Just thank you so very much.
Yes, those.
Okay, so that's a tremendous transition to the helpers. So I'm going to ask Caitlin to have the first question.
Hello, Senator. My name is Caitlin. So my question is, as a result, the opioid epidemic. And I feel that schools, particularly junior high school and high school, have failed in educating students on addiction. Now, there has been education, but it's more so like fear tactics and scare tactics on drugs, and I think that has failed. So how could we pass maybe legislature with the education department to make it mandatory for students in junior high school and in high school to make addiction studies or expand psychology courses as a mandatory course on addiction and opioids and more up-to-date research that really talks about drug addiction.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Okay, so I want to just start by asking everyone in this room, and please raise your hand as I continue to ask the questions because I have a belief that all of our hands will be up. How many people in this room have personally or one degree been affected by the opioid epidemic and crisis? How many people know someone who has been affected? Keep your hands up, please. How many people know someone who has been affected by the opioid epidemic or crisis? Or knows a family or a friend of a friend who has been affected by the opioid epidemic or crisis? Almost every single hand is up in the room, and I've only asked 3 questions of degrees of separation, which means that every single one of us has, to some degree, skin in this game. And so I am troubled by this for so many reasons, and I wanted to start with the first one. So the first one is that the problem does not seem to be getting better. And one of the things that I face, probably more often than I would like to face, is the fact that whenever we look at whatever community it is, it's not just City Island, it's across this entire state and it's across the entire country, right? But in the borough of the Bronx, anytime that we focus on this specific issue, the solution that's always proposed in what I've seen in my short time being here is a treatment facility center. Okay. How many people want a treatment facility center in their community? I'm not asking this to agitate, I'm actually asking in earnest. Okay. So there's not that many hands up, right? And so this just shows, I think, oftentimes that in many of our communities, most of us do not want treatment facility centers. The problem that I face then is, okay, we don't want a treatment facility center. There's also a lot of stigma surrounding it. There's a lot of sometimes misinformation. Sometimes it's because of the bad actors with these treatment facility centers that actually we then can't get the treatment facility and the just the help that we need. I'm asking this question seriously. What are other suggestions, in addition to education, which I want to get to in one moment, of ways in which we can actually treat people in our communities? Because one of my fears is that if we don't have treatment close by, not only will people not go to their treatment, but they will either relapse or they will die. And so you don't have to have the answer right now. This is a serious question that I'm asking. I just met yesterday with the American College of Physicians, and I asked them the same question, and I told them that this is a huge problem in the Bronx. And you have to, if you're asking me for something, you need to come and show up for the people of the Bronx and help us as well. And you need to tell us what the solutions are too, because we need to work together in community to have the right information to be able to say, okay, this problem isn't going to last forever. Well, thank you for telling me that, because that's the first time that I actually have heard that, because it does feel like it's going to go on forever. So what exactly do you propose that we do? And so, yes, I would love to hear here, and here, please. So I want to hear from you just very briefly, and then I want to answer the question about the education in schools, because there's a reality to this, and then there's also a practicality, which I think we can do collectively as a community. Yes?
So if you have,
I think one of the concerns is that if you have a treatment center in a residential community, you're inviting the problem into the community.
what is that?
Oh,
If you're inviting the problem into a small community, which is the first way to say no. Okay? The second is that it is a major issue, and it needs to have professional care. And if the hospitals, and there are plenty of them, and there are a lot of them all around, if the hospitals were to step up and to make facility available on a non-judgmental basis, then there is a place for them to go, a safe place for them to go, not a place that aggravates the community, and know that you're going to get professional care. That's my suggestion.
I appreciate that. Thank you. In the back corner, right there. And then to the gentleman in the middle. That was very helpful. Thank you.
You have to start with the physicians and the hospitals who randomly prescribe these opioids.
Yes.
If your child has a snowboarding accident, pay attention, because that's how children get hooked.
Yes.
The doctors do it. Back in the 90s, this is where the problem came from. It's not the fault of the addict. It's the fault of our whole institution. That's where you have to go.
I think that that's right, and I think that touches on the issue of liability. I think that the opioid, and I think what you're saying, that the opioid, in my opinion, the opioid epidemic is very similar to the way that tobacco dealt with that issue. They hid the information for so long, and they push it, and they push it, and they push it, until finally they were sued, and they lost.
I'm dentist. I'm old. I have oral surgery. They pull my tooth and they want to give me a prescription for Percocet. Some people sell those on the street. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And then the gentleman right in the back.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
First, I'd just like to point out the irony that we're in a bar, which is the most dangerous drug on the planet. But I think the solution should come from the politicians and do the politically unpopular thing and force communities to actually have these rehab facilities, because the opiate crisis is already here. And people on this island need treatment. So in each neighborhood there should be a treatment center.
Thank you. I appreciate that point of view. Yes.
And he's in charge of helping us find the next place for the next meeting. You'll work on it.
And then just last, I know there was a gentleman here too. Last person.
Senator Biaggi, I have a fundamental question about the nature of democracy in the United States.
Well, is it related to the opioid epidemic?
The issue is that I can talk about the opioid epidemic because I've had many young people directly known to me who have died from it.
Okay.
But I think there's another more overarching issue about democracy in this country.
Okay. I just asked, so I will get to your question. I promise I will not end. Before your question is asked, I promise, I just want to close this, I want to stay focused on this specific topic, and I want to close it out in a way that is satisfying to Caitlin. Is that okay?
I can't believe the microphone was
We'll come back to you.
I promise to come back to you. Okay. I just want to say the last thing about what Caitlin said. So this is very helpful, and we could probably have an entire town hall about the opioid epidemic, and I would like to do that because I think that this conversation is not going to be solved in 14 seconds, and I am very well aware of that. So this year, I had a bill that was pending for 8 years, right? And it related to putting in schools specific education. Okay. This bill was called Aaron's Law. It's not the same as the opioid type of curriculum that you're talking about, which I, by the way, agree with, that it does need to be done in a way that is informative, that's not fear-based, that is truthful, and that is in earnest, okay? And the reason that the bill didn't move for 8 years, there's many reasons, but one of them is because the State Department of Education, historically, does not like to be told what type of curriculum to use or to do. They don't like mandates. So I heard that and I said, that's very nice, but this specific piece of legislation is very important because we need to have child sexual abuse prevention in our schools because so many children are being abused and they need to have the tools to be able to report it. And I was told that it was impossible and that it wouldn't move and etc. Well, the long and short is that I went to the head of the Board of Regents, I spoke to many of the people on the Education Committee, etc., and we were able not only to pass it in the Senate, but pass it in the Assembly. And what I learned is that it's not that the Department of Education or the Board of Regents doesn't want to be told what to do, it's that nobody historically has been brought to the table collectively to discuss, well, what do you think? How can we do this better? What do you already teach? What happens in other states? What resources do you need as the Board of Education? Oh, you need more money because you don't have enough money for experts to create the curriculum? Okay, we can get that for you. And this was something that hadn't been done. And so I just shared this with you because I think that was a block that I was able to remove, but more importantly, to learn. And so to the question of can we put curriculum in schools, yes, I think it's actually probably easier than the thing I just mentioned because we have health class. And we already have an infrastructure that this can fall into. And so I would love to get your information and then we can work on something together.
Alessandra, would you consider walking a bit further into the room? Some people back here.
Yes, I don't know if this is going to...
So you got a bit of force point.
Yes, I actually don't know. I don't know if I need it. Do I need it? Probably for recording. Okay.
I'll just turn this up. It's fine.
Sure. Okay, he's going to turn it up.
It's also one guy.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
No, no, sure.
I don't think you're going to invite me. I don't think you're going to invite me, but the screen is not that long. Okay.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we move to our next question?
Yes. No.
Yes? Oh yeah, why don't we let this gentleman speak now? Okay, let me ask
Thank you, Senator Biaggi.
You're welcome.
I am a psychiatrist. I deal with patients who overdose all the time, and I realize what a giant tragedy is because many of the young people on this island I have known that have passed away as a result of it. But I think there's an important root cause that needs to be addressed, and the issue is income inequality and the impact on democracy. I believe that, unfortunately, the vast majority of people that control what happens in the country are people that have a ton of money and can influence the topics that are being addressed, the kind of things that are not being addressed, Mitch McConnell addresses nothing that got raised by the democratic people of this country. And if we don't get rid of the impact of income inequality, we will never escape the attack on democracy. So I think it's absolutely critical that we address this. Income inequality is unbelievable in this country. I am an immigrant. I came here at age 5, and I was lucky because I was intelligent and could succeed despite the income inequality. But most people don't have that advantage, and they struggle and lose. And if we don't have a way of addressing the impact of the multi-billionaires, including Trump, who I don't believe is a multi-billionaire, but he proposes himself to be that. And I think it's critical that we have a way of addressing that. And if we don't, we will always ignore the root cause.
I'm just going to say one thing to close out what you said, which I agree with wholeheartedly. And New York State, I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, has the largest income inequality in the entire United States in New York. In addition to what you've said, which is actually right, and I could talk about that in perpetuity because I am obsessed with this topic, the influence of money in politics is also something that deals with what you're saying, which what drives the conversation? The people who have the ability to access the people who are in charge. And how do you remove that? Removing money from politics. And so campaign finance reform is one of the most important things to me. I was very loud on that topic this year in Albany. I criticized our executive and got a lot of heat and fire for that. But it was too bad because it's a problem that there are people who can access those in charge, who can actually pull the levers to determine where the money goes, are the ones who can pay the $25,000 a seat ticket. It's not okay. So, I just end with that, and you should know that we're trying to fight for that. There's a campaign finance commission. Stay tuned. They will have a result December 1st.
Hi, good evening. I'd like to raise a point in terms of what you mentioned before about the real estate. I'd like to see you work on real estate abatements for the marine industry here on City Island, here in the Bronx, all of New York City. We are losing all of the waterfront to developers and condos, private condos. Even though every developer says there's going to be access to the water, it's all FOS. Even a private marina offers the public access to the water if you have a boat, it's your boat, your friends, whatever. We have marinas here, we have yacht clubs here. We lost a yacht club here, and a lot of that is based on the taxes. The taxes are just way too high for those, similar to what New York State did for the farmers, in terms of, especially Suffolk County. I'd like to see that program brought from the state for those marinas, and again, working people who work on the water.
I mean, thank you for sharing that. I am not an expert at all on that topic, and I will learn more about it so that I can understand that. I will include that as part of my conversation with the Bronx Chamber of Commerce, and when I talk to absolutely 100%. I think that the number there, it's such an interesting issue because the property taxes are too high and it does drive people out, and also the rent is too high for people who are renting. So anyway, two separate things, but that's a new issue, and I really appreciate you bringing. No, it's a new issue for me. It's a new issue for me, which means I can add it to the repertoire. Thank you.
Well, yeah, we're going to turn this off. That's good close. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, that was that one.
I should know that.
We know everybody's awake now, so this is good. Go ahead.
Recently, you opened a new office in Riverdale. And we are wondering if you have any plans to open another office, maybe, on this side of the Bronx, because Riverdale is obviously quite a hike for us East Bronxers.
Yes, and yes, we did open an office in Riverdale. As many people know, this district is very gerrymandered, and to go from one point to the next is incredibly challenging by bus, by train, by car. It takes a very long time. So we opened our office in Riverdale. It took us 8 months. We identified that office in late January, and it took 8 months to go through the process. We are looking for office space. We had something that we thought would work on Lighting Avenue. It fell through. It happens. And now we're looking in Westchester Square and the East Bronx to find a way to be able to access this portion of the district. So yes, and if anybody, and I really mean this sincerely, if anybody has any leads or knows any spaces, please share. Yes. Has to be accessed by public transportation, of course the bus, yes. But yes, please share information with myself and my team because we are going to be looking at spaces and it's a priority of mine to make sure that we have access, that we serve the entire district in a whole important way. Yes.
Senator, hi. My name is Paul Klein. I'm president of Temple Bethel on City Island. You attended, thank you. We're having a major issue. We've been raising money for the past 5 years to make the building handicap accessible. We have a plan in place. We have an elevator being built, and the building department has denied us a permit because we're using a side yard, which is not actually being used. So we're accessing a side yard that's inaccessible to the public. Buildings department says that we're illegally using a side yard, so it's a violation, and the commissioner of buildings can do nothing about it because it's a violation. Therefore, we have another architect who has suggested that we deal with the ADA and try and get something through that will bend the rules a little bit, as opposed to having to hire an architect to go for a variance, which could take 3 months to a year.
Are you City's Department of Buildings?
City's Department of Buildings has not given us a permit, yes.
Okay. Okay, so Miguel is here. We will personally take this on as a case to make sure that my team and myself help to usher through and also talk to our contacts at the Department of Buildings to figure out what's going on and make sure that you don't have to bend the rules. As the chair, I was not looking at you doing that, but we will help. We will help. Miguel is right here, so please write your information down and we'll make sure to create a piece of this. That's just unfortunate. It's like the no good deed goes unpunished.
Exactly.
They're like, you're trying to do something good and then you're getting punished. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with me. Miguel, do you have your card? Oh, you gave him a card. Okay.
Hi. So many of you know me as the guy who stands up at these meetings and talks about bicycling, and I'm going to do that again. So I noticed when you talked about your gerrymandered district, you mentioned how difficult it was to get from one end to the other, and you named a number of means of transportation, none of which were bicycles.
Yes. It's true. Yes, we can talk a lot about bicycles. I'd be happy to do that, please.
But what I'd like to talk about today is, so I live here on City Island. I use my bike as transportation a lot. A couple weeks ago, I had a place I needed to go to in Queens, and came to the realization that, so this is a spot quiz, and I don't really want to put you on the spot here, but if you had a bicycle, how would you get from the Bronx to Queens?
I probably would drive on the highway.
Yeah.
I'd be crazy to like that. Right. And then I would drive over the bridge. Seriously.
So the fact of the matter is there is no legal way to get a bicycle from the Bronx to the Queens. Yeah, there is, however, a convenient way, which everybody does, which is ride their bicycle over the pedestrian walkway on the Triborough Bridge, which is actually illegal. Nobody cares. It's perfectly safe. It's perfectly reasonable. Every once in a while, you'll discover that there is a policeman at the other end who's willing to give you a ticket for your infraction there. Anyway, and it's very convenient that you're here because you're with the state government, and the bridges are run by the state, not the city.
That's right.
But the real reason that I came here is I have in my pocket here, I wrote a letter to Polly Trottenberg, who I'm sure you know, the Commissioner of Transportation, outlining a bunch of specific things that I think would improve cycling in the city, specifically connectivity between the Bronx and the Queens. And I was hoping I could give you a copy of the letter and ask that your office would follow up.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you bike lanes are unfortunately controversial, but more importantly, the Bronx has, I believe, fewer bike lanes than other boroughs, which makes it even harder to ride a bike here than other places. But yes, the connectivity is important, and I will happily read this letter and would be excited to talk to her about this. So thank you very, very much for that.
Hi, thank you for being with us tonight. Thank you for joining us and listening to our request. I just wanted to bring to an attention is our youth, our young boys and girls don't have a park on City Island because the yard PS 175 is locked now on the weekends because of vandalism. And a lot of the kids have been reaching out to request because they like to play basketball and they have no place to go. So if there's any way you can help with that, that would be fantastic. Because that can also link to, the crisis that we're living through on this island. We want to keep our youth busy, active in sports and anything else.
Okay, so thank you for sharing that. I did not know that. And also, I agree with you, and it's just to piggyback so much of what we have already talked about with education in schools and also treatment facility centers and not letting doctors just run amok. After school programs and access to summer programs is also something that I'm trying to figure out across District 34. What are the areas that have historically gotten the money, right? And I've asked I had a roundtable with many of the police chiefs and the community police officers to say what areas what they're seeing, what centers have historically gotten money for the kids in the neighborhood to be able to go, where have they not? How can we fight for those areas to make sure that there's at least equality across, so there's at least opportunity to do exactly what you're saying, because I identify that as a huge problem. And unfortunately, in areas that have lower income, those are the places that do not have the art program, the music program, the after-school program, and it's ridiculous, and it's unfortunate, and it's also something that I fought for this year as part of the Foundation Aid formula package, which I won't go into in detail, but we fought for more money for that category because it would be used for things like after-school programs and music and art. And we had a huge fight with the executive, and the number stayed the same as it did the previous year, which in my opinion is criminal. And so I'm aware I have a lot of colleagues of mine who are fighting for this too. But let's start with the park here. But I just want you to know that the issue is bigger, and we're working on it too.
Yeah,
and it's very frustrating. Yeah.
They're from the neighborhood,
Yeah, of course.
and they just want a place to go.
I get it, and that's because you don't want. Because then if they don't have a place to go, then that's when you get into trouble. I was one of those teenagers.
Just one thing on that.
Yep.
Just so you know, PS 175, which has access to the schoolyard, and this one's closing it. We are getting a new principal, and Beverly and I know some others have been in touch, or we're getting us in touch with the new principal, and that's going to be the first thing we bring up. So it is a very serious issue, and we agree with you. So you do have allies in the room.
Hi there. First of all, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. And based upon what you've been saying ever since I've known you, which is not that long, but it's good, I think you like tackle problems, and the problems we're having on City Island are multifold, from the roads to the environment. There are so many. And the question is, how do we deal with that? Well, recently I gave a presentation how to do battle with the Department of Transportation, the Department of Environment Protection, the 311. There's such a viper's nest of things going on there. It's almost impossible for regular people to make sense of it. So my question to you is, have you an idea how to make sense of it and get things done?
Oh my God, that's a loaded question. Okay, I will be the first person to raise my hand and say if I could actually spend 50% of my time organizing, and by organizing I don't mean getting people and groups together around an issue. I mean literally organizing, how you organize a table of papers, the state government and the way the information flows. That to me is one of my dreams, which sounds psychotic, I understand. But I also know, and what you're saying is exactly right. And it is a problem because there is not one way of accessing information. And so one of my first touches of how this really plays out was as a lawyer, just trying to find the paperwork to register as a lawyer in the state of New York. And there was all of these links. They made no sense. You had to really, really search long and hard. And then when I finally handed in my form, I didn't know if it was correct or wrong. And also that happened when I decided to run for office, where the Board of Elections website is insane, and I was a lawyer looking at the paper and being like, I'm going to commit malpractice, or I'm going to be in like the front page of the New York Post because I'm not filling out the papers correctly, and it made me sweat, literally sweat, because I did not want to get it wrong, but they don't want to help to get it right. I don't know what this is about, but one of the things I care deeply about is the organizing of it, because I feel like when you have access to information, it empowers you, and more importantly, it allows you to enter into the system because of the way that it's designed. Even if you wanted to get involved, you can't, because then you're pushed out, because it doesn't make sense. And so, my effort to deal with this is any bills that we pass, I try to make them bill literate, right? So synthesize the information. There's all of these words. What did we do? How can I make what we've done accessible to you in a snackable content kind of way? And then when it comes to specific issues, whether it's parks or whether it's the roads or education or whatever it might be, to have like our own internal system of how we deal with it. Like if this is an issue about eviction, these are the organizations we would go to, and here are some of the steps. And then to empower the people who come through the door to also be able to do it. But it is a gargantuan effort because it has been set up really in a very, it's not that it's like a bad capital B system. It's just that it doesn't make sense for the person who's interacting with it. So yes, I hear you, and it keeps me up at night. But I want to hear your what you've done in your presentation, because maybe we can use that. Yeah, I would love that. Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'd just like to revisit the bicycle path.
Sure.
Piggyback on that. I have written letters. I have addressed our local community-based people. And in the news lately, when they talk about bicycle paths, they put the word now in front of it, protected bicycle paths, because in light of what has been happening this past year. I just want to point out that we do not have a protected bicycle path, nor do we have protected pedestrian path going over our new bridge, Woods Way. So I was wondering if this is something that you can look into, because I've addressed it several times, and we're also, like the gentleman said, trying to navigate it, to try to get it protected.
They are?
And not just by cones, I mean a real protection. Once that barrier comes down, neither side will be protected.
Okay, so thank you for bringing that to my attention, and John actually has insight into this, and I'm going to write this note down on my paper, and I also want to get your information too.
Yeah, Rose, I know I spoke to you. DOT is still examining that. I did bring up to them, as I told you, that in their reports about the Great New City Island Bridge, they say protected bike lane. I sent you the link, but that's not true. But they're advertising it as such. So we have brought that to their attention. But any political support the senator and our other elected officials can bring to bear, I agree with you, it is a very serious issue.
And also, I mean, if this is what they've promised and then it hasn't been delivered, I'd be happy not only to write a letter, but to make a little bit of noise about it, a lot of the noise, whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do that because that should be there, and that's actually very disturbing. And I think one of the things that I don't know if it's just happening more, and I think the answer is it is, but the number of pedestrian deaths and bicyclist deaths has gone up. It has shot up, and it's incredibly disturbing. And so yes, I hear you, and I'm paying attention to that. Yeah, and the school cameras, yes. 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 Yes, I agree.
I don't want anything that's ugly up there to put in just cement.
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to do something.
I hear you.
Don't go ahead and do it.
Well, I don't have the power to do it, but I think I can push some buttons to maybe try to help do it. But I actually love to work with the community, so I would happily want to hear from the community and what you all want, because it's not about what I want.
Okay, we have one more question, so yes, Olga, you're closest to that. Or two more questions. Two more.
It's more conversation and a question, but it is definitely a request.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's doable. So I'm putting it up front. I'm putting it up front so I don't get shot down later. Okay? There is a balkanization in our legislature. There is a power structure balkanization in our legislature. It's not an even-handed game at all. And I think that that piece of information needs to be made much more public than it has been made. Because I think that we need all to speak the same language out of the legislature. And when that happens, a lot of this kind of struggle that human beings have gone through for decades is going to get better because they can't hide behind the words. So I have a request that there be some new form of beginning in terms of a legislative rewrite. So there's not fiefdoms in each of these little tiny corners of the world that you have to fight every single thing with. This is America, we speak English, everybody should understand what it says, and there's no hiding behind trees.
Thank you. Can I just comment actually on this in like a very broad way, so everybody understands in the room like what I'm interested in doing in terms of organizing our government into like little categories and boxes. I think when I entered into the state senate, as I mentioned to you, I'm a lawyer. I have worked in government before. I have dealt with our agencies. I have read pieces of legislation. I've done this before. And yet I still had a very hard time accessing, right, what was even going on in the room. Because when you walk into the room as a first-time legislator, and I'm sure this is the same way in the city council, but I don't know, so I'm just going to share what happened in the Senate. You had an orientation. You talk about the bills that we're going to pass and our legislative agenda, which if you're in the room, you probably have campaigned on them, so you really don't need to know much about what's in the bill because you've read it before. The problem is that Albany specifically has functioned behind closed doors in a way that has significant, I cannot emphasize how significant the amount of damage that has been done because of Albany to the state of New York. I really cannot. It is actually heartbreaking in a way that is overwhelming. And if you don't ask questions and you're not vigilant in that room, you can literally get bulldozed because there are so many issues that come up every single day on the floor. And so I have a reputation for asking 1 million questions and really annoying everyone around me, and I don't really care because the problem is that I don't understand what I'm about to go on the floor to vote on to become a law. So I ask the questions, what that has done, myself and the 14 other new people in the room, which is 18% of our conference being new, we have created a culture in there now where there are enough of us in the room who are new. Has nothing to do with age, gender, nothing. We're new. So we're asking questions and we're also pushing the limits of the power, which for the first time, I never would have thought this, but it is really a rationale behind term limits. I don't know what the amount of time that's perfect is. I haven't even given it much thought. But what I can tell you is that when you have new people in the room, mixed with the people who have been there with all the expertise and all the knowledge, it's not a friction that is bad, it's a friction that is very good because you are able to push through things that the people who've been there have not been able to push through, but you're also able to say, but why do we do it like that? Why is our budget process done with 3 people, 3, who make decisions for everybody in the state of New York? And so, to segue here, one thing to highlight this was the budget process in Albany. We were chugging along in an amazing way from January to February, passing all these laws. It's so exciting. Oh my gosh, all the social media things that we get to say. Look what we did. We're number 1. This is amazing. And then we get to March. And we're handed this huge book and we're told, here's the analysis of the executive budget. Read it. Come back to the table. The New York State Senate is also going to have their own proposal, a one-house budget proposal. The Assembly will have a one-house budget proposal. We will all vote on it in a bill, and then the negotiations will begin. Okay. The process, I thought, naively, was going to be equal, because we're a co-equal branch of government. And it is not. And it's not equal because of a very nuanced area of the law that most people don't even know about, which is why I'm so excited I get to share it with all of you, and why when you hear this, I hope that you will share it with somebody else. because now you have a piece of information to activate someone to hopefully make them as angry as I and my colleagues have been, which is a case called Silver v. Pataki. Silver v. Pataki was a case that gave the executive, no matter who is in that seat, an unprecedented amount of power when it comes to the budget. And so what we saw after that case was ruled, and I have the chills even telling you this, what we saw after the case was ruled on was that now in the budget, if you were to read the executive budget, you see things like laws in there. You see policies, and you see really significant changes that if you look at the Constitution in the state of New York, the Constitution says that the legislative body, and as a legislator you have two constitutional duties, to pass legislation and to pass a budget. The executive does not pass legislation. The executive signs the laws, or vetoes the laws, or amends the laws, or whatever. This state is unlike other states. We are not able, as a legislative body, to even come to the table in an equal way, and so let the games begin. Because what happens is, all these little tricks start to happen, right? So what we saw was, I'll give you one example, because I could really go on, but $500 million cut to Medicaid funding was what we received. So we're not going to let that happen. I have the highest number of nursing homes of any state Senate district. I was absolutely not going to let that happen. Senator Rivera, the chair of the Health Committee, was not going to let that happen. So all of us fought really hard to make sure that that went back into the budget. Because what that really meant was over $1 billion of Medicaid cuts. Who did that? The executive. Why? Because he knew that the legislative body, the Senate and the Assembly, would not let that happen. So we had to, quote unquote, buy it back. And that ate up part of our budget. So we couldn't look at things like foundation aid funding, which I mentioned earlier, to increase our funding for schools, because we were eating up our budget on things that were basic needs, that if we cut them to New Yorkers, it would be devastating, that he knew we would not cut. And that is one little slice that is so small of the insanity that goes on up there.
It's not insanity.
It is.
So how do we fix it?
So this is how we fix it. So let me share with you. It is. But let me just share. How we fix it, honestly, this is how we fix it, sincerely. So there is a bill that's proposed to overturn this decision through a constitutional amendment. And the constitutional amendment does not have to go to the governor's desk. It has to go through the legislature in 2 consecutive legislative sessions. And that is what we intend to do. But this is one area, but it's a very, very, very important area, because where we spend our money, the capital money that's able to be used for infrastructure projects is a higher budget than the money that we spend in education. Higher than the health budget. It's not okay. So that's one solution. I agree with you. It is devastating, but we are on it. We see it. And we're paying attention, and we are raising our voices behind it. We are getting a lot of fire for it, but it's worth it.
It's the last question.
So just know that.
My name is Toby Lieberman. This year, this is a good thing to end on, I hope. It's the 100th anniversary of New York State winning women the right to vote. So I want to know what we're doing to celebrate that through you.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you for that question. So the Lieutenant Governor has a commission, a separate commission to celebrate the 100th anniversary. I will be joining her and others in whatever celebration she wants to have across the state. But you just raised a very good question that's on the radar for all of us. We will have an event, and maybe we can work together on doing something.
During 2019?
Yes. No, I know.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Let's give her a round of applause. I mean, she was really wonderful. A great first guest speaker. Yeah. We have 2 other very important guests we're going to get to, including our police department who have joined us here today. Just before I say anything else, it's just very important. Mike here really opened the doors for us and has shown us enormous hospitality. Let's give him a round of applause. And the reason we've been doing these meetings in all these small businesses is that by bringing you all together and getting great guest speakers, we are going to hopefully bring them a little business as well, right? So please patronize him, tip the bartender. Yeah, let's show some support for our businesses. As we learned this month, it's not easy being a small business anywhere, particularly on City Island. And the more we can do to donate funds to them, or not donate, but to spend money here and keep our Main Street alive, it's very, very important. Without further ado, officer, if you want to come up here, we have Jessica up here, who is our Community Affairs Liaison. She is someone who knows City Island. And Jessica, we did give out, we have, let's give her a round of applause. Again, very much not easy being a police officer either. We thank them. And Officer Williamson, I'm sorry, for his service as well. So these are 2 neighborhood community officers. So when you have a problem that's City Island based and it's not an emergency, these are the 2 people you guys should be reaching out to directly. They are the people who are going to solve your problem. And we gave out to everybody the Sector C announcement. So just going to read it out because if you're watching online or anything else, it's going to be at the Community Center in Co-op City, Thursday, August 29th. It's going to start at 1:30. But without further ado, let me give the mic to them for a few questions.
Officer Greisinger, my partner is Officer Williamson. We also have our study sector here that also works City Island and Co-op City, and then Officer Jerome and Officer Lugo. Just to go over what we do. Basically, the new neighborhood coordination philosophy is that you have a set community officer in your community, so you guys have a familiar face. So we do Co-op City and City Island. We want you guys to be familiar with us. We want you to say hello to us, email us, text us your problems. That's what it's here for. And like John said, if it's an emergency, you still need to call 911. I'm saying text and call us for something like a double parked car or your driveway is blocked like all the time by the same vehicle, stuff like that. Or I don't know, give me another example. The boats, yeah, the party noise, like the boat noise. Email us that so we can document it. We're working with Harbor, trying to find a solution for that. So if we're not here, these officers, Jerome and Lugo, they also work. So just say we're not in one day and you shoot us a message and they're here, they'll come and talk to you guys. So the whole point is that you guys have familiar faces so you know who you're interacting with. We want you to be comfortable with us.
How you doing? My name is Officer Williamson. I've been at the 4-5 for 12 years. Like my partner just went over, we really want you guys to come out and reach out to us for any problems you guys may have. We're available to you 24/7. If we're not here, we will reach out to one of the steady sectors who are here and to come out and help you deal with the issue immediately. We try to get to everybody as fast as we can. Our information is on the flyers here, and
our next meeting will be in City Island in the hall. So
yeah.
You go back and forth. So.
And we have a list of flyers up front. So after, if you guys want to grab the information off that, this way you have our email address and our phone numbers to call us at any time.
And one last thing, I know the bicycles was a big concern, especially the kids driving or riding in the fire lane. We're going to try and talk to them the best we can. They are hard to catch if they go away from us, but we're going to try and talk to them. Yeah, so if there's anything you guys need, our emails, I think they're on here, right? Yeah, our emails.
It's for disabilities.
First name, everyone, it's first name dot last name at NYPD.org. I've just helped you all crack the code for the NYPD. So this is
And obviously, like you said, for non-violent or anything, any non-emergency situations, to give us a call. Emergency, please dial 911. But also, if it's something that can wait or something that you would like us to address personally, we would be glad to do it.
Okay. Do you want to say your telephone numbers real quick for everybody? Okay. Yeah. We can just read that. Here.
Okay, we're going to give out the cards, but the number for Jessica is 917-769-2832. Officer Williamson doesn't yet have a card, but we're going to pass around the cards right now. Again, anybody, if you had a question and your question didn't get answered, we're just trying to keep this, we're going to wrap up in the next few minutes. We're going to try to keep this moving quickly. We have the Post-its out here. Write your question on your Post-it and then give it to Beverly, Dan, myself, Kim, Lauren, Louisa, anyone else. We have 2 more guests we're going to get to. I'm going to start with our government representative real quick. Anderson Ortiz is in the back of the room. Wave Anderson. He's a frequent visitor who's been listening to us, and he has been calling us back on things, and we thank you. Do you have anything you want to say real quick? You are good. Okay. Last person who's going to speak tonight is probably one of the most important things we're going to hear. This is, as everyone knows, we were talking a lot about the opioid crisis, and we need to talk about helping those who help others. And recently, we've had a very, very good development in that someone has taken the initiative to start a bereavement group for those who are suffering. And she's here, and she's very knowledgeable, and she's very caring about this issue. It's Jillian Sia. So Jillian, why don't you come up here and just tell us a little bit about the group, and let's give her a really big round of applause, because this is really, really, really an important thing.
And thanks to the police officers. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Jillian Sia, for those of you that don't know me. And so the beginning of this summer, I decided to start a bereavement group on City Island. You know, some of you already know about it, and a lot of people have already reached out to me, you know, thanking me, saying how needed it is in the community. But a lot of people have asked, you know, why did you decide to do this? Well, grief is nothing new to me. When I was 12 years old, I lost my 25-year-old brother. As if that wasn't a hard age enough, being a bratty teenager, I had to deal with being that girl who lost a lot of her friends because they didn't want to deal with me. But then I decided to turn to a group myself called the Treehouse at the Bereavement Center of Westchester. I actually recognize somebody that I volunteered with here tonight. So 4 years ago, I actually decided to start volunteering there to give back. Working with young kids who have lost a parent or a sibling. And, you know, now that I've studied, I'm in my master's program for mental health counseling. So, you know, when the semester ended, I decided I want to do more than just take classes and do assignments and that's it. I decided, you know, on City Island, there's been a lot of deaths up here, as many of you may know, close to home. And besides, you know, when you think about those deaths, you might think of it as another statistic, but behind every one of those deaths was a beautiful life that was lost, and you have a family behind that. You might have, you know, a spouse, a parent who had to bury their child, you know, a sibling, and, you know, then they have to deal with that, and they might go through the same thing that I did, you know. Your friends don't want to hear about it anymore, or they don't know the right thing to say, and it can be difficult. So I felt like, you know, why not have that in my community? Because, you know, especially going through grief myself, I feel like I'm able to understand where people are coming from. And, you know, already I've seen such like an improvement in the people that have been coming, you know, as they mentioned that it's nice to just kind of come and, you know, we meet every 2 weeks, and you know, you can go through those 2 weeks with a lot on your mind, and sometimes just knowing that you're going to go somewhere and just release all of that itself is a big help. So, so to conclude, we meet at the City Island Community Center. It's every 2 weeks, so our next meeting is going to be August 21st at 7 p.m. I have a Facebook page. The group is called Compassionate Journey, and you guys can also, you know, come over to me. I have some cards if you want to shoot me an email or a text at any time. Just come over, say hi, and I'll give you the information on it. So thank you, guys.
Okay, thank you, Jillian. Does anybody have a post that they want to give? We're going to close out the meeting. Does anyone have a question that didn't get in? Oh, one very, very last thing. There was a big development on boat safety, and Yvette has a flyer, and she's going to explain it very quickly from the Coast Guard.
As a member of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, yesterday the governor signed the bill that's to make it mandatory for all boaters to have a boating safety course. It's going to be phased in over the next 5 years, but it starts in January.
Right.
I bought some flyers. The next course is in August, and since the boating season is winding down, we thought that some people might be someone who would like to get trained.
Okay. All right, thank you, Yvette. Let's give Yvette a round of applause. She is not only a volunteer in the Coast Guard Auxiliary, her grandson is as well, so it's multi-generational, and thank you for your service. Everybody, Post-its, you know, send them to me. Oh, Bronx 29 bus, this is the last one I'm just going to answer right now. Bronx 29 bus, we will have an update on that. There's going to be more open forums in October. Anybody else, sir, I will get to you, but Post-it notes,
We're hitting 9 o'clock. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so very much. And we'll be around to answer any questions you have. And Mr. Blackman, I'm going to you. You're going to be the first person. Thank you all very much.